Welcome to this week's Therapeutic Tuesday. And this week I'm working with Becky to figure out how to manage overwhelm. And I think this is a really good one for people that feel like they've got lots of tools, techniques, kind of things they know they should be doing, could be doing, but sort of feel like you're in a bit of a state of overwhelm of how to put all of those bits together. So that's what I'm working on here with Becky. Thank you for being willing to put yourself out there in this way. I really appreciate it. So we've sort of got up to 30 minutes or so. And I just read the email that you sent to Jenny, which was kind of helpful in terms of some context. But maybe just say a bit about what you're hoping to get from the time we've got.
I think just mainly answering a few questions, a few issues I've got with working with some of the tools and some of the processes.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing.
Great. Let's dive in. So, do you want to give me a bit of just kind of context of where you are at this point? Just in terms of where you are in terms of recovery and energy and limits, just so I've got some context and we can.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you a bit of background, I probably don't necessarily describe myself as having chronic fatigue syndrome at the moment. Okay. I have in the past. About 10 years ago, I had a period of about 2 or 3 years where I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. Came to the Optimum Health Clinic at the time, and if it was looking back now, I don't think I took a lot of stuff in, particularly on the psychology side. Mm-hmm. I did get some things from it, particularly like relaxation and using EFT. At the time, I was going through quite a stressful period. My mum had terminal cancer, and I got better just by the stress kind of going away. Okay. And so I kind of got back to, I suppose, normal life in a way, got back to exercise, went through uni again, did a degree. And it was about 2.5 years ago where I've been working full time, came down with quite a bad chest infection. I was having quite a lot of time off work, and just anxiety set in really, because I thought I was going back to where I was kind of 10 years ago. Okay. I was going down that path again. Looking back on it now, I realise that I think I was just sort of reliving the trauma of being ill. Okay. And I was at a point where I was in between jobs. I'd got a new job. I was taking a lot of time out of work from my current job, and I just thought I'm going to not work my notice period and give myself time to sort of get better before starting the new job. And then I kind of did a bit in that time, but then I just had loads, again, more anxiety issues, sleep problems before starting the new job. But I mean, I did start it was okay. But kind of since then, I've just noticed there's been a lot more anxiety. And the past 12 months, I've been having digestive problems, now diagnosed as SIBO, mm-hmm. which I'm addressing with functional medicine. And I think some of my symptoms are related to that. I do get tired. I do have, kind of issues around that with my digestion. But I am working full time. Yeah. Okay. Fairly sort of active job. I teach Pilates and I'm a physiotherapist. So it's quite a sort of so it's quite a kind of active job, and I am managing, but I feel I could be managing better as I know things just aren't quite right. And I think because it sort of happened again, it's just been, for me, a wake-up call in terms of there's just some things that I need to sort out and I need to address so that I don't kind of go down that route again, really.
Yeah. It sounds like you know where it can end up. Mm. And it sounds like you've got some tools and you're sort of using some of those tools and you're kind of managing to tread water sort of thing, but you're not, it sounds like you're not yet getting to the point where you're able to calm your system enough that your kind of body can fully get back into a sustainable healing state. Which it sounds like is the thing which is important, given that last time it was removal of stress, or that was the external stress being removed. One can still have external stress, but calm the internal stress to the point that they're still in a healing state, and therefore recovery is possible. What does your self-care routine look like? So what's your kind of structure in terms of how you're using the various tools and techniques that you've got?
So I'm fairly regular with my meditation. I do use that quite a lot. I think I'm fairly fortunate in the fact that I kind of do shifts, and some of them are later. I work later, which means I have the mornings to kind of, if I don't sleep great in the evening, in that night, it means I can then just get up a little bit later, which does help. There's a couple of days where I do have to get up to an alarm, but then I know that the next day it's a bit better. So fortunate in that sense. Got a very understanding boss who has kind of just given me a little bit of extra time at sort of lunchtime. So if I need to, she's even said, just have a lie down if you need to. And sometimes I do that. And I think I'm kind of got a lot more used to listening to my body, and just knowing when I kind of just need to take some time to rest.
Yes.
Even though I do sometimes find it a bit difficult to actually, I can be sat down not doing anything physically, but mine's going quite a lot. And I think kind of, internet devices aren't very helpful because I can kind of be on those quite a lot. So that's kind of something I'm working with.
Do you feel like more often than not you're in a healing state? So do you feel like your nervous system is generally, I mean, obviously there's times that it's not going to be, but is your kind of general baseline, do you feel like it's kind of calm and settled or not?
I think it varies. I have noticed times when I do feel calm and settled. I think it's probably a little bit more that it is a bit more kind of elevated, feels a little bit more ramped up. I think that's more kind of the majority of the time.
What are the primary stress patterns that you're aware of? So when you're triggered into a kind of stress response, what tend to be the external triggers, or what tend to be the internal thought processes?
Externally, it's if I think I've just got a lot going on. And it could be kind of rushed at work, various things like that. But then internally, I think there's sort of anxiety around my symptoms, mainly symptoms. And I think I just have this kind of sense that I'm a lot of the time just kind of rushing to do things. And when I notice it, I do just try and calm down and slow down physically if I can. I've got a lot of thoughts going on at the moment, just in terms of what I kind of want to do in terms of my job, my career. So there's a lot of issues around that. And then I think all the nutrition side of things, because have to kind of plan what I'm eating, spending a lot of time in the kitchen. So there's that as well. Yeah.
So what sort of comes to my mind is that quite a lot of the things there's things that you could be doing that are sort of happening. And I think this is one of the challenges when you kind of know quite a bit, like you've read stuff. It sounds like you've probably watched some stuff. You did the 90-day program, whereas you've done some other bits and pieces. So you've sort of got a bunch of tools and a bunch of things that are there. And there's some sort of things that you kind of know, I'll probably spend a bit too much time on screens, probably spend a bit too much time rushing around, probably spend a bit too much time thinking about the future in a kind of stress, kind of mental tennis, kind of stress-inducing way. And I think it can be tricky sometimes, and we sort of know there's a bunch of kind of on their own relatively minor, modest kind of things, or there's kind of that, there's that. And you're trying to juggle life, you're trying to juggle work, you're trying to juggle everything else that's kind of going on. And a strategy that I think can be really helpful sometimes is to sort of go, right, let's do an experiment. Let's see what happens if initially you commit to, let's say, 5 or 7 days, and we come up with a list of all the things that you think you could do that would help improve your situation, and a list of all the things that sort of get in the way, and do it as an experiment that if you put all the right things in place for that period of time, what happens? And it may be not much happens, and then we've got kind of decisions. Do we go, well, let's double down for a bit longer? Or it's like, why is that? What's in the way of that? But normally what happens is we sort of go after 5-7 days or a couple of weeks, go, well, actually, yeah, I sort of can see that I'm calmer, and I can see that actually perhaps there's a bit more energy, perhaps there's a bit more kind of less of the kind of periphery kind of symptoms that are going on. And it's just a kind of good way of getting a real sense of actually, I can have an impact on this, and actually these tools are effective. And that doesn't then mean that you have to be totally rigorously using everything all the time, but it's sort of then going, well, actually, which are the pieces which seem to have the biggest impact? And it's a sort of trial and error. So it's like we put kind of a lot of things in place for a short period of time, then we start to take a few things out, put a few things in, and figure out what is the actual plan of all the different bits that you've got that actually is helping and supporting you.
Yeah, that certainly sounds... Yeah, because I think at the moment I'm just kind of trying to want to do kind of everything.
Yeah. You're in overwhelm because you're trying to do all this stuff and you're not really succeeding at doing any of it perhaps as well as you could, but then you're not feeling much benefit, and then I think you're in an overwhelm pattern around what you should be doing, what you could be doing, what you must be doing, what you're not doing, what you're forgetting to do.
Yeah, that's right. Because I also went through the reset program as well. So obviously there's a lot of stuff in there.
Tools there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's great, and I did learn a lot from that. And kind of in a way, it's kind of stuff that I kind of maybe, if I'd taken it in sort of 10 years ago, might be in a different place now. But you know, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I don't think you lack tools at this point. I think what you sort of got into an overwhelm of actually putting those tools into practice and being effective with them.
Yeah.
So let's come up with a list initially of things that it would be helpful to do less of or to stop doing temporarily. So one of those things I think on that list is probably so when you say, is it, I'm making a bit of an assumption here, so I'm going to check it out. That my guess is that when you get bits of downtime, probably part of what you're doing is you're going into your phone, or you kind of mentioned going to screens as a sort of way of distracting. So if your kind of nervous system's a bit kind of ramped up and you're kind of overstimulated, and you might remember from module 6 on reset, we talk about emotional styles, and one of those styles is a kind of distraction pattern. Yeah. So it sounds like I think your nervous system gradually ramps up through the day with all the stuff and all the demands of the internal stresses, the external stresses. And then sort of what happens is you distract yourself away from how you're feeling, because that's easier than actually feeling it. Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that's certainly, because I can sometimes be trying to watch something on TV, and I kind of start watching it, and then I kind of just, something will come into my mind, and then I'm on the phone, and then I'm just not watching what is going on the TV. So there's just too much stuff going on, I think. So certainly I think it is. And I do notice sometimes, even if I'm sat down trying to watch TV, that my system isn't calm. I think I fidget quite a lot, which kind of, to me, is a kind of sign that I think my nervous system is a little bit ramped up.
I think so too. So we want to have less screen time. We want to have less kind of fidgeting, distracting, kind of looking for stuff, because all of those times when you're distracting yourself, there are actually opportunities to reconnect and calm your system down. And you've got loads of different tools and techniques to help you do that. But I think, again, you're sort of in overwhelm. And when we're disconnected, we tend to choose things that further disconnect us. And when we're connected, we tend to choose things that further connect us. So the more disconnected you get, it's sort of like the more you distract yourself, the more you keep busy, the more you kind of say yes to stuff you probably should say no to, because you're sort of on the treadmill of disconnection. The more you connect to yourself and the better you start to feel in your body and your nervous system, there's sort of a level of self-protection that comes in, that we don't want to get pulled away and distracted. We actually want to go deeper into being in a calm, healing state. So the calmer we get, the more we tend to choose things that support becoming calmer and taking care of ourselves. So as well as some of the things that need to be removed, like distraction, like too much screen time. I'm not saying no screen time, but too much screen time. It then sounds like also it would be really helpful to have multiple check-ins during the day to sort of, to ask a fairly kind of simple question. Right now, am I in a stress state or am I in a healing state? And if you recognize you're in a stress state, that is then an opportunity to go, okay, I'm either going to use the stop process, or maybe going to do some EFT, or you're going to do a mini body scan or meditation. You've got options in terms of tools, but you need to have the awareness first to recognize that actually, yes, my nervous system is overactivated. I'm trying to distract, or I'm just kind of running on the treadmill, almost running to the point of run off the energy, and then I'll be collapsed into a kind of calm state at the end of it. How could you do those check-ins? Like what would be a helpful way for you to do that, do you think?
Yeah, so what I sometimes do when I'm at work, I just kind of notice when I go to the toilet.
Yes.
And sometimes just in between patients, particularly if I know I've got one after another, and it can be quite, kind of quite stressful. So yeah, sometimes I suppose I don't necessarily just sort of notice how I'm feeling, but it's more just kind of just stopping. I might just, focus on my breath for a few times, just before I start on the next patient.
Yeah. So when you're at work, you see patients hourly or half hourly, or what's the shift?
It varies. Sometimes half hour, sometimes an hour.
So could you take a minute to do a mini kind of body scan and mini meditation between every patient?
Yeah.
Would that be achievable?
Yeah.
Okay. And every time you go to the loo, take another minute in that way. And then how about when you're at home or when you're not seeing patients? How would you put in those kind of regular checkpoints?
I think that's probably more difficult the times when I'm at home, because I do notice when I'm at home, there just seems to be a lot more stuff I could be doing. Like I said, particularly spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and I sometimes notice I'm trying to do about 3 things at once. And so I think, the time at home is more difficult.
So how about when you're at home, you set an alarm on your phone for every hour, and each time it goes off, you reset it?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about doing this for like a never-ending, disappearing, overwhelming amount of time. It's a little bit like saying, okay, let's be a scientist. Let's test the hypothesis.
Yeah.
The hypothesis is, does a consistent focus on calming your nervous system result in a calmer nervous system? So kind of like, can you directly impact the state of your nervous system? Because right now, I think you sort of feel a little bit powerless. I think you feel a bit overwhelmed and a bit like I'm just kind of at the mercy of life and all the things that are happening. And so if we can shift that belief and shift that kind of perspective and go, actually, okay, if I really focus on calming my system, then I can. Now, obviously, there's a new question that will come in around how do you do that sustainably, and kind of how does that fit with life, and how do you, so, the simple answer to that is you figure out which are the pieces that you most need to be doing, and you can maybe you go from hourly to every 2 hours, so you can start to adapt. But initially, I want you to have that experience of going, wow, I really focused and I felt a difference.
Mm.
I think that would change that sense of belief around the overwhelm that's there.
Yeah. Because I think at the moment I do have a bit of resistance to some of the tools, because I think that in theory it's great. I understand the theory behind it, but then there's a part of me that's like, oh, it's not going to work. So I think.
So say more about that resistance. That part of you that's like, it's not. What if it doesn't work, or it won't work? What's the story behind that?
I think because I've kind of tried a few other things around sort of breaking thought patterns, and I got really wound up by doing it because there was a kind of part of me thought that I was telling myself off, and it just created more stress. So that's one of the things. But then I obviously kind of going through reset and how you've sort of described using the stop process is I feel is much better, because there's not so much kind of telling yourself off, and you don't have to kind of think about something differently. It's more about focusing on your body, but I think it's also just remembering to use it, and using it at the right time.
Yeah, that's my sense. And I would say even initially, given the level of kind of busyness and stuff that's happening, and perhaps there's been some kind of history around feeling like you can't be effective in shifting things, even just do a mini body scan. So even use the body scan that's in reset and just use the first few minutes of that even. But just, it doesn't need to be, if you're ramped up to like a 7 or 8 out of 10, it doesn't mean you've got to get down to a 1 or 2. If you get a 7 or 8 down to a 5 or 6, but you do that every hour, there's going to be a dramatic impact over time that your system's gradually going to learn to reset and to calm and to settle. So it's a sort of like, going back to that, how do you eat an elephant one mouthful at a time? Well, let's just start off with getting really consistent with just taking a little bit of an edge off your system. Because once you realize you can be effective in doing that, then it becomes much easier to bring in more tools and more techniques and to kind of figure out how do you do that in a more sustainable way. But initially it's having that sense of, I actually can impact what's happening in my system.
Yeah.
What would get in the way of this? So we're kind of coming up with a plan, and hopefully you kind of come away from the conversation going, yeah, that feels kind of like right. That's a good kind of step. What would sabotage this?
I think I just sometimes have issues with routine. So I can kind of set sort of goals for myself, and it's great for the first week or two maybe, and then just things start to slide, maybe because life stuff gets in the way, and then I kind of think, oh well, I haven't been able to manage that, so I won't kind of bother.
But you get knocked off track, and then it's sort of like, well, I got knocked off track, so it's all failed, it's all a disaster, there's no point, sort of thing. Yeah. The thing is, you are going to get knocked off track. Particularly, we're coming up with quite a rigorous kind of plan for a short period of time. So how could you talk to yourself in a supportive way when you do get knocked off track to get yourself back on track?
Yeah, I think, this is one of the things that I've kind of been working on, is how I talk to myself. It is more, I think I've, just being a bit kinder to myself, I think, would help. And maybe if things aren't don't go to plan one day, just maybe sort of saying it's okay, we'll sort of carry on tomorrow.
So I think it's going into this knowing you will get knocked off track. So getting knocked off track isn't the challenge. Getting knocked off track, the challenge is getting yourself back on track. Yeah. So we're Thursday today. Does it feel achievable to do this over a weekend, or do you want to start today and then have a pause for the weekend and start again Monday? Like, what feels achievable?
I think starting Starting today is achievable. Tomorrow is not a usual day for me. I'm doing something a bit different. So it's so whether or not I mean, I could probably still manage to do some of the things tomorrow because everything's really fresh in my mind. But it's kind of fitting it in when it's more a kind of normal day for me in a way.
Tomorrow's going to be quite good because tomorrow you're going to get knocked off track. So tomorrow's going to be a good opportunity to kind of go into that going, my challenge tomorrow is to do what I can, but at the end of the day, not beat yourself up and not tell yourself that you messed it up and it went wrong, to just be completely okay with what is possible tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then what does Saturday and Sunday look like in terms of routine and rhythm?
Fairly normal. I haven't got any sort of massive, no major kind of plans. Okay. It's kind of regular yoga classes and things like that I tend to do. But it's nothing. There's nothing really that I think could get me knocked off. It's probably quite a good opportunity to practice because I'm going to be at home a bit more than. So it'd be a good idea to practice then.
So what feels like a good amount of time to take this initial commitment for? Is it, I don't know if it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, what feels right to you?
I think 7 days, because my days just vary so much in terms of routine, that I think just to get a good idea of how it might work would be good to do it over the course of a week. Yeah.
Great. So to summarize, you're going to check in with yourself, if possible hourly, but sometimes you might miss an hour or two and that's completely fine. Mm. But where possible hourly, certainly half a dozen times a day, let's say. And when you check in, you're going to check, am I in a stress state or a healing state? And you're then going to use the various tools at your disposal and tools subject to what time you've got. So if you're home and you've got 5-10 minutes, you might do some work with the stop process. If you're at work, you might just literally just do a quick body scan in the way that you've learned to do through Reset. Mm-hmm. But you'll do what you can. You're not aiming for a massive impact each time. It's not a kind of like, I've got to stop every pattern. It's just, can you take a subtle edge of what's happening in your system, but do that consistently? And then at the end of the week, send me an email. So Thursday next week, send me an email and tell me how you've got on. Okay. And what we're aiming for is not some like dramatic, transformational, life-changing experience, which is, if you have, that's fine. But it's, can you see the impact of you using the tools to calm and settle your system? And then I think that the goal will be then to start to look at what's a sustainable step forward from there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any questions that you've got?
Don't think so. Just a little thought in my head is that what I've done before is kind of put reminders on my phone, and the reminders will go off, but then I tend to not kind of follow through with the reminders. Yeah. So that's something that I need to just have a think about.
Yeah. Well, and in a sense, it's realizing the importance of this. It's sort of going, okay, I'm really committing to this because I don't want to feel like I'm just surviving life. That it's great that you're not classifying yourself as chronic fatigue. You're living a relatively normal life, but life's harder than it needs to be. And so it's kind of going, actually, you matter enough, and this matters enough to go, okay, I can commit myself a week. And does that mean that every time your phone goes off, you have to do it? No, you aim for 75-80% would be great. But it's sort of going, I'm going to make this more important than searching Instagram or Facebook or whatever for a week. And then you see what impact you have as a result of that. Yeah.
No, when you put it like that, it sounds more achievable that way.
Yeah. Good. I'm looking forward to your updates, and good to chat. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
I hope you found that helpful. Do check out the rest of the Therapeutic Tuesday library of sessions on YouTube. And also hopefully in a few weeks' time, we're going to start releasing some of this new series of film sessions that we've been doing, where we're not just filming in the sessions, but we also have the participants filming video diaries and really showing their experience behind the scenes. So I'm super excited to be hopefully starting to share those episodes in a few weeks. And tomorrow is Wellness Wednesday, and we have the third in our 3-part series with nutritionist Julia Alderman and talking about supplements. And in this episode, we're particularly talking about how to manage supplement reactions and really how to take supplements in such a way that hopefully avoids reactions. And if they do happen, how to respond to that. We have a lot of experience at the Optimal Health Clinic working with people that are hypersensitive, and there's some really important lessons that are going to be shared in tomorrow's episode. So I look forward to talking with you then.